Like Sam Porter Bridges staring across a plain of seething floodwater, I'm not really sure where to go with this Death Stranding 2 video. Typically, I'll thoroughly plan these out before I type a single word, as if mapping a route through dangerous terrain. First, I'll talk about the graphics, followed by the story, then the gameplay, and hopefully, at the end, I'll deliver a heartfelt conclusion that earns praise and likes from all who watch it. Death Stranding 2 on the beach can't be spoken about like that. It takes your expectations, your best laid plans, your well-intentioned determination to just get on with the story for a bit, and buries all of that underneath a thundering landslide of breathtaking distractions. A mountain ridge snaking away into forever. Clusters of chiral crystals sprouting from a tar swamp. A sunrise so sudden and beautiful, your current objective is momentarily shocked from your mind. Here is a game that invites preparation and organisation, then delights in flinging the unexpectedly sublime in your face at the earliest opportunity, leaving your mouth wide and your neatly ordered boxes of "I've played games for over 30 years, nothing can surprise me" strewn all over the floor. Sam is the perfect conduit for the player in this respect. He wants to get on with it, and, so do I. But then, invariably, I'll crest a hill, and there will be something spectacular or weird, or both, and I can't help but walk cinematically over to it and give it a poke. And so, I figured, for this video, I'll just go with the flow. Because trying to pin down Kojima Productions' sweeping sequel with traditional structure or sense or even genre is about as pointless as trying to handcuff a river. And anyway, when it comes to rivers, I prefer to churn through them in an off-roader, timeful tearing at my custom decals, a factory's worth of special alloys anchoring me into the mud. My current self-appointed objective is to restore a section of monorail along the west coast of Australia, a stretch of beach that curls outward from a place the name of which I won't spoil, all the way to West Fort Knott. An unglamorous mission? Absolutely. But necessary? Well, no, but I'm going to do it anyway. I've got cargo to deliver and connections to make. Those stars aren't going to earn themselves. The level 3 battle skeleton isn't going to just fall into my lap. And also, back to the monorail now, when it's built and fully operational, it's fun just to ride the monorail and contemplate things like infrastructure and grief and why you've got a man trapped inside a puppet swinging from your hip. For tens of hours, this is basically left completely unexplained. Stallman is just there, but I can't help but respect Hideo Kojima's not uncharacteristic dedication to the profoundly absurd. But why am I telling you about a 3-hour session I had the other day where I literally did nothing but build the monorail? Because it led me to this, a thing so beautiful and technically astounding, I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. Along the coast, I encountered this flock of chiral creatures, that's what the game calls them, think evil birds made of tar, and stood there, mesmerised, while they pulsed and undulated as one, like actual starlings, a shimmer of chiral gold rippling across their collective surface. I went into photo mode at this point and zoomed right in, trying to pull the hood off this seemingly impossible piece of coding wizardry, but no, there they all were, a group of, 500, 1,000 individual tar birds, all flapping and cawing and being all weird and Death Stranding-y. I then made the mistake of driving directly underneath them, and they pelted my off-roader like a torrent of angry hailstones, and I made a promise to myself to never go that way again. This is just one of many unexpected moments Death Stranding 2 has seared into my brain over the course of my playthrough. It's not just the surface level visual splendour either, and despite the fact you can literally see it right now in front of you, I do have to state the obvious and say this game looks sensational to the extent that no YouTube video is ever going to do it justice. But anyway, it's not just the visuals, more the uniquely Death Stranding vibe of unsettling sci-fi cool the visuals help create. You know, we're 2 games in now, and I can begin to feel the lore of this world solidifying into something cohesive, an undercurrent of writhing weirdness upon which the characters and narrative somehow successfully float. No story spoilers here, but you learn why Tarman, voiced by Marty Roan and faced by Mad Max director George Miller, has an unusual oily stump in place of a hand, for example, and despite the explanation being wonderfully bizarre, it sort of makes sense.
Yeah, his hand is in the tar currents that run beneath the earth, and that's how he's able to pilot the DHV Magellan underground through the tar and then have it pop up in whatever place Sam's managed to connect to the chiral network.
Right.
Is it allegorical or symbolic? Or does Hideo Kojima just think it's cool? Almost certainly it's a mix of all 3, but at this point I'm happy just to be buoyed along on the tide, to let the game drag me along its currents past story beats full of heart and warmth and terror and trauma and humanity. That is what Death Stranding 2 is about, I think. It's certainly what it got me thinking about, for sure. About how underneath the masks and makeup and black ooze, all the characters are just people, crying and laughing and wanting like all of us. Elle Fanning is predictably brilliant as the enigmatic Tomorrow, that scene you might have already watched in a recent trailer, a fist-pumping highlight. Lea Seydoux as Fragile does inner torment roiling underneath a cool exterior better than anyone, and Shioli Kutsuna shines as Rainy, a beam of light piercing the bleak clouds of her backstory. However, it's Norman Reedus who, yes, carries Death Stranding 2's story.
He should have just loaded it onto a floating carrier.
See, what you've done there is you've brought the whole tone of this
You wrote this.
Norman Reedus imbues Sam with this deep, silent sorrow, only possible when an actor of his calibre and performance capture of this quality combine. It's all in his eyes and in what he doesn't say. This is a guy who spends the entire game under a crushing weight, and I'm not just talking about the assortment of weapons, lost cargo and extra large container of ceramics you just pilfered from that brigand camp. He's a man of few words, but my God, his story hits like a battering ram.
It's a reaction to the chiralium.
I'm not going to say anything else about the story. You've just got to play and see what Sam goes through for yourself. Thematically, Death Stranding 2 is absolutely loaded. You know, it would fill an off-roader, 2 floating carriers, and still have boxes piled high on its back. There's heavy stuff here, with the melancholy, meditative rhythm of the core gameplay loop giving you space to reflect on what the game is trying to talk about. The trauma of childbirth, and even of losing a child. The rising concern of human isolation, both potent and pertinent after what the world experienced in 2020, and about how we're connecting maybe in unhealthy ways through filters and projections and screens, and what that lack of face-to-face connection could mean for us socially, politically, personally. It's about being haunted by the ghost of the tragic past as individuals, but also on a global level. The Death Stranding, you know, it's essentially a grief apocalypse, humankind faced with the violent echo of wrongdoings both past and present, and the catastrophic reaction that occurs when we physically encounter the manifestation of that toxic guilt and regret. The BTs, drifting flickers of loneliness and longing, clawing at the seam between the living and the dead, causing city-levelling void-outs upon achieving the human contacts they can't help but yearn for.
And so, all of that considered, there's a question you have to ask. Does it feel good to punch a man in Death Stranding 2?
Goodness me, yes it does. Men, mechs, BTs, although you can't punch those, you'll need either blood grenades or the lovely blood boomerang instead. Both combat and stealth have been beautifully refined to the point that Sam can confidently prowl around enemy encampments, secure in the knowledge he's got the necessary firepower even if things go loud.
And it will, often, because the enemies in Death Stranding 2 are pretty smart.
I was caught out a bunch of times early on by how good their eyesight is. You know, they can actually see you, like a person would, unlike most video game guards who prefer to wait until you're floss dancing on their fresh corpse. Not only will they spot you, but they'll call for backup and flush you out as a unit, pincering through the camp until you've got nowhere to go. On one occasion, I was engaged with a couple of enemies inside a camp and hadn't noticed two of them climbing a small cliff behind me until I had bullets raining down on me from above. The result of this is stealth gameplay that feels invigoratingly tight and tense. If you're good enough, you can ghost your way through a camp and be out of there without a whisper. A dozen befuddled brigands bound and dazed as you saunter off with their cargo.
I'm not going to draw comparisons to other games, but yeah, doing this feels badass.
The true measure of success is how the system handles stealth breaking down. And all credit to Kojima Productions here, because the heightened cat and mousery of slipping away from alerted enemies, punctuated by flashes of desperate combat, is, if anything, even more fun. My favourite toy is the hologram decoy grenade, which projects a piece of digital scenery you can hide in. As long as you're not spotted nipping inside, you can set some wonderful traps like this, particularly if you combine it with a decoy grenade that can be remotely activated to generate a fake Sam to distract enemies.
There's even a holographic BT grenade you can use to frighten enemies away, but personally, I prefer it when they stay and fight and lose.
All-out action is also a ripping good time, mainly because you've got such an exciting arsenal of gadgets to mess about with. Burst fire shotguns with grenade launcher capabilities, machine guns, assault rifles, stun bombs that send a crackle of electricity through enemy vehicles, knocking out anyone inside. A tar cannon you can either carry or plonk on the ground, which hoses enemies unconscious with a jet of viscous black stuff.
A ghost blade, which can be used to fight ghost mechs.
Even if this was rubbish, it would be brilliant, just because it sounds and looks so cool. But it's not rubbish, it's great. This bit in particular, a lightning strike of anime cool, momentarily illuminating the surrounding ocean of maudlin science fiction. Then you've got the occasional boss fight, like this one from early on in the game. And the fact I'm fighting an enormous, terrifying mech designed by the legendary Yoji Shinkawa, I feel almost starstruck by this.
What a treat. You know, this game has brought me close to tears a number of times, and this was one of them.
The DHV Magellan 2, your mobile base of operations, just looks so Shinkawa. I love it. I just love it, and I'm convinced you will too, especially if you enjoyed the first game. Death Stranding 2 follows a similar structure in terms of you connecting a continent-sized slice of open world to the chiral network. You'll push east this time through deserts, jungles, valleys, coastline and mountaintop. The map a gorgeous tapestry of otherworldly splendour. But for me, the reason I think Death Stranding 2 is such an important game goes beyond how good it looks, how breathtaking the floods, landslides and wildfires are, or how exciting the stealth and combat is. It even goes beyond how incredible the baby graphics are. I mean, look at this. That giggle, those little teeth. It's almost enough to make me think I'm holding a real baby. Honestly, it's so realistic.
God, that's really realistic.
Rob, that's my actual child.
Oh.
All of that, you know, all of the unparalleled beauty, this peerless world Kojima Productions has conjured, that's just the container. What matters is the message being delivered inside.
And the message, well, it's a bit like the mysterious golden glow in Pulp Fiction's suitcase, isn't it? You know, for me, despite all of the apocalypse of isolation and oil ghosts, for me, the message is an optimistic one.
Or at least it's a plea, an outstretched hand, an invitation. Should we have connected, is a question Hideo Kojima posed in Death Stranding 2's marketing. And I think what he's getting at is, should we have connected like that, through the fuzz of chiral communication. Instead, should we connect more like this? Hand to hand, eye to eye, face to face. Like this heartwarming crew of sci-fi eco-warriors and Sam, keeping on despite everything, shouldering burdens both physical and spiritual, one step at a time. But really, Death Stranding 2's message is going to be dependent on each individual player, and wonderfully the game gives you the time and space to figure out what that is for you. It's literally baked into the gameplay, stretches of walking from place to place, gorgeous scenery in the background, a melancholy piece of music playing. Hideo Kojima is basically saying, slow down for a bit, have a think about what that last cutscene was about. You know, gameplay doesn't just mean shooting stuff, that's just one of many enjoyable strands of this. And for a game as big and beautiful and luxurious as this, to intentionally strip itself back to the base elements of sight and sound, to the protagonist placing one foot in front of the other, gifting you the opportunity to either reflect or simply be present in the moment, I think is something truly special. Oh, and you can wear an otter hat if you like.
Should have planned my route in hindsight.
Death Stranding 2 on the Beach arrives on PS5 on the 26th of June, and I think it's one of the most important games I've ever played. You simply have to experience it. If you've enjoyed this video, leave us a like, let us know in the comments if you're picking up the game, and don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you're always bang up to date with everything from the world of PlayStation. Thanks for watching.
PlayStation